Hello. In this video, we are going to look at how to use the built-in types in Python 3, but specifically looking at how to use them with strings for string manipulation and analysis. Now, I want to say this right up front. This is going to look very daunting, so don't be intimidated by it. What we want to do is figure out how to use it in the very targeted fashion. What we want to become as programmers are good at finding the tools that do what we need to do. Don't try and memorize stuff. You don't need to memorize anything. The tools that you use regularly, you will naturally memorize. But programmers always have this API available to them, and they actually are regularly looking online to find the instructions about how to use these tools. So don't think that you're going to have to memorize all these things, because you won't have to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this built-in types page, and I'd like you to do that as well. And let me show you how to do that. Simply do a Google search for built-in types Python 3 and make sure you're getting the Python 3 documentation, because there are built-in types in Python 2, and though they're similar, they are different languages. And then we're going to search in here specifically for string methods. And there it is. So this is a list of all the methods that you can apply to strings. I don't know what they all do. We're going to pick a couple just to understand how to read them. And the way you read this is you take a look, and let's start with this capitalize. Capitalize has no parameters that are needed, so there's nothing inside the brackets. So that means I don't have to give it anything to kind of function. This means I need a string to act on, and I can see here that it returns a copy of the string with its first character capitalized and the rest lowercase. So let's take a look at this inside a program. So I have a string, which I've just put A, B, C, D, E, F, and I've put those indexes up there. So they have indexes 0 to 5 and a length of 6. And if I come down here, I can go word dot. And this is a great thing about IDEs. It's trying to help me. It's giving me a list of all the methods that I can act on this word or this variable. And the first one happens to be capitalized. Don't mind the self inside the brackets there. For our purposes right now, we can ignore that. So I'm just going to hit enter, and notice it auto-completes it for me. So what this method's going to do is it's going to take this variable word, and it's going to capitalize the first character A. But the problem is when it does that, is it doesn't actually change word, it just returns a new word. So I have to actually store that somewhere. So I'm going to say new word equals. And then if I print my new word, there's my new word with a capital A. Now let's talk about this really useful one called index. Index allows you to find the starting index of a string within a string, so a substring. This is really useful when you're analyzing strings and you want to see if something is contained within it. So let's use that same string word, and we're going to make a variable called location. And we're going to say word.index. Now let's pause for a second. Let's go back to the documentation. So let's find index in here. Because Python is a weakly typed language, it is not, you don't have to pass all the parameters of the method all the time. And the way they indicate that in the documentation is, you see how those parameters are contained within square brackets? It means that they're optional. It means that I don't have to pass the start and the end. And we're not going to talk about those added parameters in this video. We're going to look at this method such that we only pass the necessary parameter, which is this one here, sub. And that's the substring that I'm looking for. So we come back into our thing. Index, and I'm going to look for the index of the B. Double quotes, it doesn't matter, but, and then I'm going to print location. So if I print this, it gives me the index of 1, and sure enough, the B is in index 1. I could look for EF. Then I run this, and it finds the index EF, and sure enough, that's in index 45, so it gives me the index 4, the starting index. So this index method is a really useful one. Finally, we're going to look at the isDigit method. And the isDigit method will return a Boolean that is true or false, telling me if a string contains all digits. So this is really useful if you want to take an input and then cast it to an integer, but you want to check first if the input actually can be casted. And if you watched our videos on inputs, you'll realize this is something that can be a bit of a challenge. So I'm going to say isNumber. I'm going to make a string called isNumber, a variable called isNumber. And I typically like to use the word is or has when I'm making variables that store booleans. So I'm going to say word dot isDigit, print isNumber, and I run this, and I get false, because this is obviously not a number. But if I come in here, and I put the number 12, and I run this, isDigit would return true. Now, before I run this, I'm actually going to comment these out, and then I'll bring those back in a second. But if I run that, I get true, because word isDigit, 12 is a digit. So now, if I run that method, I could then cast that to an integer and do some mathematics with it if I wanted. So let's end this video with bringing this index back in. So we can see that word does not contain the string EF. So the question is, what does this method return when you do that? And what's actually going to happen is you get a runtime error. The program crashes. So if you try and use the index method on a string that doesn't contain the string, the program crashes. And to solve this problem, we have to introduce a bit more advanced technique, which I'm going to demonstrate in our next video. So if you're interested in looking at how to avoid this crash, take a look at the next video. We'll look at try except statements. I hope this video helped, and as always, post any questions. Have a great day.